Welcome to the Pain Relief Path podcast, where I dive into the vast world of chronic pain with the occasional help from knowledgeable guests from diverse disciplines that impact your chronic pain. I am your host, Dr. Pan Zhang, physical therapist turned chronic pain coach. I'm here to educate, empower, and encourage you to find your path to a pain-free life. Thank you for listening. Enjoy. Hello and welcome back to Pain Relief Path. My name is Dr. Pan Zhang and I am a chronic pain coach. In this episode, we are talking about what it really means to be ready for change. And if you are somebody who has tried a lot of different things, nothing has really worked, and you found it really, really difficult to stick with things for an extended period of time, let's say more than 1 or 2 months, this is the episode that you need to listen to, okay? So I want to bring this up because I've had a lot of clients come to me and say, I'm really ready for change. I want to make this change in my life. They have, their picture of their life, what they want their life to be, but they have no idea how to get there. And they've tried all of the things. But when they've tried these things, it just nothing's really stuck. And when I start asking them certain questions, and we're going to get into some of the questions in a second, because I want you to be asking yourself some of these questions. And depending on their answers to some of these questions, we start going down the rabbit hole sometimes of whether or not they are truly ready for change. Now, before we get into that, what I want you to really take away from this episode is that whether or not you are ready for change, this episode is for you to pause wherever you are on your journey to being pain-free, to pause, really take stock of what you've been doing and what you're doing now, and seeing if those things are really resonating, not with just with your daily life and how you're incorporating, but with your values, and also if you have a good why. When people talk about change is really, really hard. And in fact, you have to be more uncomfortable and more unhappy with your current state than your fear of your future to be able to change. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, that is totally me right now. But fear is a really, really big, strong emotion. And that's an emotion that a lot of my clients or prospective clients just can't get through. And when they imagine their new identities and their new selves, that new person that they're trying to reach might not actually be lining up with the values that they hold the dearest. So when you are embarking on your journey to a pain-free life, really take stock and pause to make sure that the person that you are trying to be or become is somebody that represents the values that you hold the dearest. So I came across a quote recently that says, people don't resist change, people resist being changed. And that is something that really makes you think for a second, and it's totally true. Let's take thinking about wanting to change, for instance, the idea of changing into something new and fun and exciting, and wanting to change into this person that you really have idealized in your mind is really comforting. But when the process of change happens, it can actually be a very scary process because it's changing your thoughts, your feelings, your normal reactions to things. And when that happens, your brain kind of goes on high alert. And when you're in pain and your brain goes on high alert, guess what happens? Remember, we've talked about this before. Pain is your brain's alarm system. So when your alarm or when your brain is in high alert, your pain signals are going to go off. So when people start changing, a lot of times they will go through more flare-ups. But with the right guidance and the right coaching, they can really work around those flare-ups, or have tools where those flare-ups are just not as bad as they really can be, or they have been in the past. So that's just a little preview on change and how that can be a little bit more daunting than what you might think this process and this journey is going to look like. So let's go over a list of questions that I have that I often talk to my clients about, or my prospective clients, to evaluate how they feel about changing their lives and kind of the steps they take. And your questions can give you a better window into, honestly, why change hasn't happened up until now, and how ready you are for change. So I'm going to post these questions in the notes for the podcast here, so feel free to reference those. But if you're doing this while you're listening and you have a pen and paper in front of you, I would pause, if you can, as you're listening, and write them down. Write down answers as you're listening, because the first time you hear the question, and you can write it down right now before going back and re-listening to this to write down the answers, that'll be best for you, because you'll get the most raw and honest answers that you're going to give yourself before your brain can kind of layer over things to make up different stories, okay, to really help protect yourself. So again, I've got these, I do have these in the show notes, but if you're listening to this live right now, answer these right now. And I would definitely recommend writing down your answers, because when you write down your answers, you can read back to yourself what you're thinking, versus kind of just thinking about it and mulling it over. When you write it down, it is on paper what you're thinking. And sometimes coming back to those answers the next day, and when you look at those answers, you can say, honestly, I've done some exercises like this, and I'm like, who was this person who wrote this? That's not me, because your brain has basically put another layer of story on top of those answers to protect yourself and to protect your current state. All right, are you ready for some questions? So the first question is, what was the last thing that you did that you committed to help with your pain? Whether it's a program, or like a formal program, or a exercise program, or doctor's orders, or taking a medication or supplement regimen. What was the last thing that you did that you committed to help with your pain? Write that down. The next question is, how long did you stick with your program? Now, don't start putting other things down. It's just how long, whether it was a month or a week. Don't put anything else down, just the time frame. The next question, what were your biggest limitations or barriers in sticking with the program? Because I'm assuming, if you're listening to this, that you're still in pain and nothing else has really helped you, right? So what were your biggest barriers or limitations in sticking with this program? And write down a list. Don't write down reasons. So if you feel like time was a big barrier for you, just write down time. Don't write down the reasons why time was a barrier for you. Just write down the time. If you feel like finances were a big barrier for you, just write money down, or finances. Those are the two most common barriers that we tell ourselves we have, okay? But don't write down any reasons that you've been telling yourself why this is true. Now, look back at that list of barriers. The next question is, are these things, the limitations that you wrote down, did you have any form of control over these limitations? And then it's just a yes or no question. Again, don't write down too much, just yes or no. Now, the next question is why or why not? If you wrote down, yes, you had control over these barriers and limitations, what kind of control did you have? Did you tell yourself that I didn't have time, but when you look back on it, I really did have time, I just didn't make time? And if that's the case, why didn't you make time? That is the next layer of questioning that we typically don't go into. And that is the important part, because a lot of times we beat ourselves, we stop at, I didn't have time, but I could have made time. And that's where you stop. And that's where you really beat yourself up. So I should have just done it. But why didn't you make time? That is a really important question. If money was a big issue for you, whether, you felt like you couldn't afford the supplements, or whether you felt like you couldn't follow that line of, doctor's procedures or whatever, why do you feel like you weren't able to afford them? Some people really, truly just have like zero money in their savings. But if you have money in your savings and you told yourself you couldn't afford it, but you are still, going to Starbucks every morning or doing all these things, you're making these, daily choices over this treatment. So don't beat yourself up. This is not a judgmental thing. That's really, really important. It's really just making sure you understand why you didn't make the choice to make that financial commitment. Okay? So really dive into the why. And I should have said this at the beginning, but when you're answering these questions, keep yourself from diving into the self-shame spiral of doom. These questions are meant for you to just examine the stories that you've been telling yourself. These questions are not meant as a gateway for self-judgment and self-shaming. That's very, very, very important. Okay? So let's get back to the questions. The next question is, so after the limitations and barriers, kind of got off on a little tangent there. Did the program work? If it worked at all, it doesn't have to be 100% effective, but did it work even just a little bit? Or did it not work at all whatsoever? Your pain in your life didn't change one iota. Did it work? Yes or no? If it's yes, it doesn't have to work 100%. If your answer is no, it just didn't work at all. Okay? And if it did work, even just a little bit, what worked about it? What really felt good to you doing that program? And if it did not work, what didn't you like about it? And why didn't you like that thing? So a lot of people, when I ask them this question, they'll say, well, it just wasn't for me. Why? Why wasn't it for you? And with each answer to that why, I want you to ask yourself one more why question. So let's say, I'm asking you, why didn't this program work? Well, it just didn't work for me. Like I just didn't feel good when I was doing it. Why is that? Well, it made me, the program said that I had to exercise every day and I just don't feel like I can do that. Why don't you feel like you can do that? And this is just literally, it's that next step of why. So you're self-coaching yourself, right? I'm teaching you how to really go through this process yourself. So I would go deeper, at least 3 or 4 levels of why, with each reason why it didn't work. And you can do this for why it did work as well. And it can really shine a better light as to, one, what programs might work better for you, what kind of programs might work better for you, whether it's self-directed or more guided hands-on programs or more physical programs versus more things that require more like daily supplements and tracking and things like that. Everybody is a little bit different, and there definitely are programs that are going to work for you, and there are programs that are not going to work for you as well. So this is a really good way to evaluate what is going to work and what isn't going to work. But if you've had a lot of failures in programs, and failures, what I mean to say by failures is if you feel like you've failed that program and it doesn't feel like it made a positive change in your life, you really want to sit back and ask why. Multiple levels of why. Okay? And when you get to that third or fourth level, that's when that real truth comes out. That's when those layers of those protective stories start getting peeled away. And that's when you're really going to understand, oh, I might just not be ready to go down this road yet, or I'm not ready to tackle this part of my pain yet. And that is what I wanted to really talk about. And here's the deal. If you are not ready to tackle that part of your pain, if you're not ready to go down that road yet, that is okay. But that is something that you have to truly accept, or else you will keep going down this road of trying a new program, trying new things, and feeling like you're a failure every time when it doesn't work for you. And then telling yourself and really validating the story to yourself that nothing works for me. I'm just going to be this way forever. I'm just going to be in pain forever. And that's not the truth, but your experiences keep validating that story to you. But is it that you can't be helped, or you are not ready to tackle some of the things that really can help you? If you're not ready, do not beat yourself up. It's not a bad thing to not be ready, but you just have to recognize that you're not ready. Sometimes it's just time. You just have to sit with that for a while and understand that, this is a feeling that I'm sitting with, and this is the feeling of that I'm not ready to confront yet. And that is okay. But man, recognizing that is one of the most powerful things you can do. And for a lot of people, here's the trick. Once you recognize that, then you realize, oh, that's what's holding me back. Well, that's not too bad. I can change that, and I am ready to face that and change it. So I know this was kind of a big, heady podcast episode. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of it. And I would love to hear what your results were from the questions. Feel free to DM me on Pain Relief Path on Instagram, or shoot me an email and let me know what your whys were. Whys, plural. And, if you're not ready to commit to change and really commit to changing that deep down why, that is okay. Just recognize it and sit with it, and one day you will be ready. But if you keep burying that reason down over and over again, it's just going to get covered by more and more stories, and you're going to get more and more frustrated, and you're going to keep chasing your tail. So this is the first step. Uncover all those stories, peel back the layers of the onion, if you will, eat all the layers of the cake, whatever analogy works best for you. I like the eating the layers of the cake, but see what works best for you. And just sit with that recognition once you find it. All right, well, I hope you guys have a fantastic week, and I will see y'all next week. Bye.